Hey there, Laura Hockman, the medical matchmaker here. Today I'm going to tell you a story about the first time that I took Cole as an intern. Now, if you are squeamish or maybe you're eating and you don't like to hear gory stories when you're eating, please turn off this video. If you're not a physician and hearing about things medical may trigger you, there will be death that I'm talking about. So please turn off if you cannot handle this or if it'll give you nightmares or something. So, when I was on my first rotation as an intern, it was inpatient medicine ward. We had one intern with us, and he had somewhat of a surfer accent. Remember, I didn't grow up in this country, and so discerning voices is a little bit more difficult to me just because I grew up speaking and listening to a different accent. So this was, and he came from Kansas, nowhere near any surfer town, but the way I think of it in my head is it's a surfer kind of accent. So he had this lovely patient. She was an old lady who had broken her hip, very old lady. And every day he told these stories, and I was always in awe of his compassion and his intelligence. I mean, so smart, this colleague of mine. And so I'm on call, and I get a call, I finally fall asleep. It was probably around 2 o'clock in the morning. I fell asleep for the first time after doing admissions, and I get a call, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes later. And I pick up, I return the pager. This is back when we were using pagers. And I answer, I say, "Hi, this is Dr. Hockman. I got paged." And I hear this surfer accent saying to me, "Hey there, Dr. Hockman. Mrs. So and so in room 104. She's just died, and we need you to pronounce her dead." And so I'm like, "Oh, Chris, what are you doing here? It's 2 o'clock in the morning." And so I say, "Okay, I'll be right up." And then I walk upstairs and I wake up my chief resident, I had loved my chief resident. I was so fortunate to have him as my chief. And I said, "Matt, gotta go upstairs. Mrs. So and so has died, and I was told I have to pronounce her dead." And Chris called me. I don't know why Chris called me. It was so strange. And here I am thinking, wow, he is dedicated. He came in at 2 a.m. for his patient that died, and I'm not that dedicated. I haven't come in at 2 a.m. if my patient needed something. And of course, this is, me thinking that everyone else is better than I am because I'm human, and I've learned a lot since then. So anyway, we walk upstairs and Matt and I were saying, "Gosh, what's Chris doing here? I'm so confused." And I get upstairs and I see the nurse and I say to the nurse, "I don't know what Chris was doing here, the resident, the intern that's taking care of Mrs. So and so." But he called me and said she's dead, and he was like, "No, I called you to pronounce her." And I was like, "No, it was Chris. It was totally Chris." And of course, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd had 5 minutes of sleep, so I probably wasn't thinking straight. And I'd never seen a dead person before. So, Matt, my chief, explained to me how I would do this and how I pronounce her dead. And I go in and he says, "You have to say the D word. You have to say she has died." And so I go in, and there's this very dead looking old lady lying in bed, and her family was around her. And I listened with my stethoscope for her heartbeat, which of course wasn't there. And I said, "Yes, she has passed." I couldn't say the D word. And then, after I pronounced her dead and wrote the death note, there was a code blue in the room just across the hallway. And so I run across and we do the code blue. And of course, it's my first time running a code blue and doing CPR. And, which is funny because I don't know what I was doing in med school. I was definitely at code blues, but I don't know that I actually did CPR. So we were all doing CPR, and it was the goriest CPR I have ever seen. There was blood everywhere. It was absolutely awful. And then this lady's kid comes in and says, "No, she's DNR, she's DNR." So it was so horrific, and I just wanted to throw up after that. And, I mean, like, I thought all CPR were like this. And I mean, they're not nice, as you probably know, but, having just pronounced someone dead and then done this really bloody CPR was kind of traumatic. So that was my first night on call. I made it. Um, I think of it actually fondly as a night that I learned a lot and bonded with Matt, my chief resident, and bonded with Chris, who the next morning I found out was not in the hospital at 2 a.m., but the nurse that called me just happened to have the same type of surfer accent. So that was my first night on call as an intern, and the rest of the nights were not as gory. And I totally could do CPR after that. I could totally pronounce people dead, and actually learned to appreciate the dying process and really enjoyed being there for patients and their families throughout that transition. And all the things that I thought like that the other doctors were more dedicated than I am or that smarter than I am. I've come a long way since then. I've learned that we're all smart in different ways, and I'm certainly dedicated to my patients, and I really appreciate that dedication, and I know my patients appreciate it too. So if you think that this first week is overwhelming and awful, I guarantee you it'll get better. It did for me, and I ended up loving residency. So I hope you too. You do too. And when the time comes, if you are ready for someone to help you find a position, I'm your gal.